think the basis of the previous birth, having all that support, has made going into this one not be something I'm afraid of. When I chose to go with a midwife over an obstetrician, it almost felt like I was maybe doing something quite different or alternative. They keep you informed and they keep you supported, and they always, acting in your best interest, I suppose. That was really a big part of it.
Terrifying. Yeah, that's probably the best word when I think back to it. Oh, I was nervous, but I'm one of 5, so I figured if my mum could do 5, I could definitely do 1. We were quite naive going into it and didn't think that anything could actually go wrong.
I think that it's a huge, huge issue. Most women experience some sort of challenge in their birth when they're having their first baby. Now, whether that turns into a traumatic experience or not is dependent upon who's caring for them and where they're being cared for.
Birth trauma might be different things to different people. For some people it may be that they've had a 4th degree tear right into their rectum, but for other people they can feel quite traumatised if their delivery didn't go the way they planned, even though there were no external appearances of what people traditionally call trauma. It can be psychological trauma as well.
There is very much a disrespectful culture in birth that women are coerced, they're bullied, we hear of women being yelled at, forced into procedures they don't really want. There is lack of informed consent. This is what should be considered like sacred time, and these women are being treated really disrespectfully.
So I had a really long labour. I think it was like 36 hours all up. And she was also back on back. So my back pain was just like unbelievably bad. And so it was after I'd had her, I was bleeding behind my placenta. So it didn't seem that bad like once I'd had her, up until the couple of minutes it takes for the placenta to be delivered. And then there was the rush and the panic. When you know that doctors and nurses know what they're doing and you sort of see them panic, I think that's the scary part of it. My uterus it was exhausted, it had just given up and it wasn't contracting back down by itself. So they did have to manually do that.
When she got rushed away, I had like a split-second decision to stay with Harper or go with Jess. Bub was healthy, everything was fine. Yeah, going with Jess was the hard part. Once the theatre room door shut, that was pretty well it, yeah.
I remember when a midwife was pushing on my stomach to contract my uterus back down, I had said it hurt and she was hurting me, and she told me that I'd die if she didn't do it. So things like that are, things that just will probably stick with me forever.
I think Australia can stand proud in the international community and say things like our maternal mortality rates are amongst the world's best. We can say that our perinatal mortality rates for babies are amongst the world's best. We do great work with very, very small babies, with premature babies, with early babies, and we're quite proud of those statistics. But I think there's always room for improvement, because a birth, someone's delivery, is one of the most important days in their lives, and it's certainly a huge day in the life of mothers and fathers everywhere in the world.
I think the thing is that women now are actually realising that their experience matters, that it's not just the women that have experienced something that has been highly horrific, it's actually their own feelings in their birth, that if they identify it personally as being traumatic, then it's traumatic.
It's really hard to put into words some of the stuff that I have read from women, from not being able to bond with their baby, to marriage breakdowns, women having to give up their jobs because it is so debilitating when they've got PTSD or PND from a combination of things, but birth trauma is a contributing factor. We need to consider not just the emotional and physical impacts on mum, but the economic impacts for us as a society.
I think it is a huge contributing factor in things like depression and mental health problems after birth. Women often feel upset that they don't feel the same attachment to their baby as they expect that they should. They feel very guilty about their feelings around their birth, and that leads them to have extreme difficulty in mothering their babies. And look, that is, I think, our biggest problem, because really the early mothering period is the period where we lay down everything for the mother's well-being and for the baby's well-being.
Do you want some strawberries? Yeah. How was your day at school? Good. I guess the love of your kids will make you go back. Dan really wanted a second one.
That's good too.
He said to me, we're such good parents that we should have more.
That's it.
And even though it was a terrifying decision to make, it was the best decision, so yeah.
Well, I think we did it well as a team. We discussed it. It wasn't a split-second decision to go back again.
My anxiety was a lot higher the second time around, which is why I was suggested to, you know, see someone and have more support around.
We know that more and more women are seeking out continuing midwifery carer. We know that that has higher satisfactions. If we were to make this about women, that's what women want. Like having that known midwife, it floors me so much that we can see 20 different care providers and still think that that's an okay way to treat women. We would never see it in other areas.
Making sure that a woman sees the same midwife throughout the whole of her labour is expensive. For people in the public system where they may see a different person at each visit, to try to allocate so that they only see the same person becomes very expensive. And the question is, how do we as a community decide we are going to afford that?
Unfortunately, you know, I get that governments sort of see that they've only got a finite bucket of money. So we need funding reform quite desperately to look at the whole episode of care really, and to see women through from beginning of pregnancy right through to that 6-week period after birth.
The difference between both births, there was a lot more communication in the second birth to the first. So I was a lot less panicked.
As much as it's all about the birth and the delivery, I think how you're cared for leading up to it and then after is really important as well, because it gets even more challenging after you have the baby.
Oh my god, we did it.